I find it's really helped accelerate both my drawing and my sculpting in both directions, because ZBrush is very much like drawing, in 3 dimensions. And then to take that back into clay sculpting was, I found very useful.
All right, so we are recording.
And it looks like, I think Camtasia is recording also. So this will be a fun test if it works, because I look very pixelated. You look great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you look kind of pixely, but it's a weird one. I don't know. We'll see how it comes across.
Just my Logitech webcam. It's a good camera, but it's not a 4K.
No.
Canon.
No, this one isn't either. But then again, I wouldn't want to suck up that much bandwidth. But you don't want it. This is pretty good. It's not like it looks like a moving bag of Lego or something. So you're right. That's always a joy when you get that. That's the curse of these higher fidelity cameras, though, is it just ends up more payload. I mean, as we found with the 4K camera, it just means, a 10-minute video is just like, you have to buy hard drives to do all that. And then it takes longer to download. 1080 seems perfectly good to me.
Yeah,
there we go.
I think so. Maybe for the stuff we're doing.
So on this one, we're going to talk. It's the second part of the chat, because I chatted to Dom a while ago for long enough that we decided to split into 2. And in this one, talking more about his process, about his art and stuff, because he does some very cool art, and I'll put some links to that in the show notes as well. So
process is important.
But today, I thought we were going to have a little chat about life casting, but not the typical kind of life casting that we are used to doing.
Yes. Yeah.
You've been doing some special life casting.
I have. It's the second gig I've done with this particular mortuary in town. I did one back in May. It's hard to believe that first one was 7 months ago.
Wow.
That one was really. I mean, they're all difficult. It's not something most people are accustomed to dealing with or seeing. So except the first one was particularly difficult, and the family wanted casts of his hands and feet, and as well as ink prints, which I did. I want to be able to help families when I can, and I'm presuming that they will get some closure or some kind of relief from it. But I did one just a few days ago, a 97-year-old woman who died of COVID, which I didn't find out until I had already arrived at the mortuary. Mm-hmm. And I had talked to one of the daughters. It's an interesting family situation. There's kind of a little bit of a feud going on between the siblings, which is why it took them so long to decide to do this. I mean, the woman had been in hospice apparently for several weeks, and they could have done life casting while she was still alive and gotten exactly what they wanted. By the time I was called in, she had already been embalmed, which the embalming process fortunately kills all viruses. So there was no danger of us contracting COVID while we were doing this. But embalming also pretty much locks the body.
Right.
Not quite like rigor mortis, but it, if the hands are in a certain position, and her hands were crossed across, over on her chest, we'd move the hands, and if we let go of the hands, they'd go right back to where they were. Mm.
Yeah.
So we were immediately challenged by how are we going to do palm casts and full cast of her hands, because they couldn't flip her over. Ideally, would have been best to have her face down so her arms were hanging down on either side of the gurney she was on, and then we could just put her hands right in cups of alginate. Boom, easy peasy, done. Well, they wouldn't flip her over because they didn't want to risk anything leaking out of facial orifices that could be hazardous material. So we had to do her prone on her back, and her arms, her fingers were, I showed you a picture of the cast. We couldn't get her fingers apart to do a palm cast.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we tried to do a clay press, and it just did not turn out at all usable at all. But we managed to get hand casts. It was difficult, but we got hand casts, and I'm going to be able to create a semblance of a palm cast from the full hand cast. But we had to basically stick her hands into a tube of alginate and then use our own hands to keep the alginate from spilling out all over the place because it was lying on its side.
Sure.
But
so that's tricky. That's
tricky. It was tricky, and it took far longer than I had hoped it would, but we got usable results.
Oh, well done. That's a tricky thing, but important work, because I think it's one of the few things where you would want a cast rather than a scan, for example, that might give you the same shapes, but it's not actually from the, do you know what I mean? It's not actually being in contact with the skin. And
right.
So that's quite a tough one. Yeah, the COVID thing's a bit scary, but I'm guessing you would arrive.
Yeah, we were wearing gloves and suits and masks, so it's just weird seeing somebody, the shell that somebody used to inhabit.
Yeah,
it's just not something that people are accustomed to seeing.
Yeah,
and I mean, it is what it is. And I'm glad I could help out. It's there aren't many people in town, or I guess anywhere, that do this kind of work. It's not something that I think it takes a special type of individual to become a mortician. I think it's a noble profession. You're helping ease some suffering of those who are left. And when I was talking to the daughter on the phone, she was just so grateful that I was willing to do this for them. And it's tough talking to somebody who's just lost a parent. 97 years is a good run, but it's still your mom.
Yeah.
And she was just in tears and beside herself, thinking that they almost, because her funeral was less than 24 hours after we did the life cast.
So yeah, a lot of pressure.
So there a lot of pressure to get it done, and they were afraid that they were not going to have anything physical to be reminded of her.
Sure. Yeah, it's not something I've had to do myself, and I've had chats with there's a guy called James Adams who I've worked with a lot, who has done it. It'd be good maybe to get him on the podcast.
I think Paul Savage just did someone not too long ago, also, because he had reached out to me about what to do. And I said, just hard. Be prepared.
Yeah. So there's a whole an emotional response you're going to have just as a human being that you have to kind of get past first, so you can be of utility in that moment. But then you also need, like you say, to have to problem solve. You've got the typical life casting issues you've got, but it's not reasonable to say, oh, we'll just do another one. It's kind of, it feels
thankfully my
invasive.
My process for doing this stuff is I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I tend to over prepare for these sorts of things. And this is definitely a case where I'm glad we had plenty of alginate, plenty of plaster, plenty of wet clay, that I had brought full body Tyvek suits, because nothing went according to how I had envisioned it in my head beforehand.
Sure. So you got plenty of spare materials, and like you say, it's always that thing, isn't it, of like with any life cast, even with a willing and compliant model, you'd always want at least, I would say, 3 times as much material as you actually need, so that you can do it again if you get caught out because the stuff's set too quickly, or something goes wrong, or you drop it or anything. which is an expensive thing to have to get that sorted, but it's also more expensive to set it all up and then screw up a life cast.
Yeah.
And now we're all here and we've done that. And sometimes the most expensive thing is getting there and doing it, and someone has to fly in for a cast or whatever. And
Yeah. And we only had one shot at this.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not like we could come back tomorrow and redo it because she wasn't going to be around the next day.
No. And did you?
Fortunately, we on the plus side, we didn't have to worry about her discomfort by using cold water in the alginate.
No, I guess not. And I guess she's not emitting any body heat, so you haven't got that stuff setting up as quick as it normally would either.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess they keep them chilled. So again, you've got that issue of it taking longer. So you don't want a slower setting alginate. Did you have help? Were you there
I did,
with an assistant,
yeah.
or did
Jackie,
did the daughter help?
Jackie Ryan helped me on this one.
Oh, cool. Friend of the podcast.
Yeah, she helped me on the first one and was more than happy to help out again. And thankfully, she was available because they're already out for Christmas break where she teaches. Because this, I could not have done this solo. This was definitely 2 pairs of hands, possibly even 3 pairs of hands, because of the way the body was just so locked in position. I mean, literally, we'd move her arm down to the side of the table to do the cast, and if we let go of it, it would just move right back into the.
I mean, that's just not something
chest.
you think would be the case, but like you say, these are unique situations that would require experience and understanding in this situation. You can't just wing it and hope for the best, because it's embarrassing to screw this up.
Because I was there on my own. The funeral director had met me there and had to run off to do some other funeral type stuff, pick up an urn. But there was nobody else there who could have helped us or helped me. So I am so thankful that Jackie was able to be on board, and she was a godsend.
On a nicer note, have you ever done any like baby's feet and hands? Because I did my boys' feet when they were very small.
Yeah.
What was your technique for that?
It's the younger the better. Is when you've got an infant that's maybe a couple of weeks old, but they're just gonna sleep through it. But when you get a toddler, they're real wiggly, and you're likely to have to make 2 or 3 attempts before you get a good cast, because they just will not hold still.
Yeah. I think if you've got a temperature out water, or an alginate that sets at a nice temperature, then it doesn't need to be distracting cold.
Yeah.
But I can't remember who recommended to me, and I did it with my kids, and it made a big difference, was that you mix up the alginate, put it in a bag, hold the bag over the foot, and then you can squeeze the neck of the bag. And then when they move around, you've contained it as the stuff sets.
That's a good idea. I haven't tried that.
Yeah, it kind of contains it, rather than an open container, which they could pull their foot out and flick, and then have a great time splashing the room with alginate, and they do.
Yeah.
But that worked with my kids. And then because their feet are relatively short and the ankles are still quite chubby, you have a reasonable size aperture to slide it out, and you can squeeze the alginate and pop it out very easily. They're bendy.
And if they are wiggly, it's almost inevitable there's going to be, there's always going to be some level of cleanup after you pull the cast out. That first play. But a wiggly toddler, there might be some significant resculpting going on before you have something that you'll have to remold that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think hands are worse because they're capable of so much more movement, whereas feet, little stubby toes, and they move. And then as the alginate kind of stiffens as it sets, it would slow down, and you can kind of give them something in their hands to distract them at least, so that would minimize their attention on their feet.
But the detail,
hand casts are tricky.
The level of detail that you can get with alginate for those kind of casts is extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so neat to see that kind of detail.
What kind of alginate do you like? What's the best that you use there?
I've used a number of different. I like AccuCast alginate quite a bit. They have several different. I don't want to say types, but that set at have different working times. Smooth-On has a lovely alginate called AlgaSafe, and then they have AlgaSafe Acrobat that I believe has small polyester fibers in it that increases the tear strength,
Mm-hmm.
which is really nice. Environ Molds makes some really good alginate. They sell predominantly to the life casting market for, keepsakes, when a hand holding a baseball, or two hands and 20 fingers entwined, that kind of stuff for kits.
Mm-hmm.
And they have one that has fibers in it also that's really strong.
So yeah, sliding hands out and
Mm-hmm.
stuff would be quite useful, because I've done with handcasts and stuff of the thing you leave like a strip, depending, normally if it's for TV or something where you want something that's got to look absolutely flawless, you might consider where the seam is the best place to put it, normally on the inside, and then you just leave a strip unbandaged,
Mm-hmm.
so that the hand can flex through, and if you need to split the alginate you can, but it's normally there by the wrist, that shift from the wrist. I mean, I've got quite small, like the width of my hand to my wrist is quite significant, so I'd have a hard time getting out without splitting it. But if I was a proper man and had proper thick wrists, then it'd be easier to get out. But I have these little limp wrists.
I'm
So,
the same way.
so it's just one of those things. So getting a hand cast out is quite amazing, and the suction is quite, when it kind of pops out. It's quite
You
glorious.
almost have to do the collapsible core thing with your fingers, because if you're doing a cast like this, you've got to kind of squeeze your hand in, collapse the palm.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, trying to keep that distance apart whilst your hands are, and they go numb if it's really cold, then you kind of lose sensation, and then you don't know your two fingers are touching. I did some stuff for the crown. I'm trying to find some pictures of it. For some frustrating reason, I can't find all my making of stuff of the crown. I must have lost it when I had my computer issue a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's a drag.
Yeah, I must have some. I'll have a look on my phone and see if there's any from back in the day, but I did some really nice ones with the hands. A couple of the fingers were close together, and I ended up sort of sawing into the hand and then like moving the whole part. So, because if you just move the finger from the knuckle, it looks stupid, because actually the bones of the hand flex out as well, and this is quite useful with the camera, isn't it? So I can actually show you what I mean. The fingers kind of flex out.
You can see my tendon. Look at those old tendons.
Oh, you showed me that picture of your hand the other day, and you were like, "Look at the reference. I'm useful for something. I'm my own reference.
I am now good for age reference."
Yeah, no, I'm the same. And like the eye details and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's all kind of, and the grey hair. I mean, you look at our podcast picture, like my beard. There's no grey in that beard. That's only about 4 years ago. But a poorly dad, and a couple of funerals later, and we're good to go.
This. It's all going white.
It's all silver fox. That's what it is. So I'm getting more cayenne pepper than ginger spice. But no,
you've got some silver back on the back of your jaw.
Silverback.
looking quite distinguished.
It's grown long. It's COVID length. I've decided to grow it out a bit. I keep trimming it because I don't like it coming out the sides. So
you and Rick Baker.
Yeah, his beard's looking amazing, but I wouldn't put us on the same level in any other fucking capacity on that one. But yeah, his beard's awesome. He's having a lot of fun, isn't he? Someone Kiana messaged me about it. He's just basically, he's living the dream. He's become like a full-time Instagrammer, it's just like that's his thing now. But
he's enjoying his retirement, which is it's marvelous. Well, he certainly deserves to have some fun.
Absolutely, but I'm really stoked that he's using his time to have fun and play. I mean, that's what the amount of people, we know, grandparents, whatever, that when they retired, they didn't have something to do and they just withered. And he's just like, now he doesn't have like deadlines to worry about. He's having the greatest time.
And it's obvious from the videos that he's posting that he really is having a good time.
Yeah. And he's doing all that self-application, which is hard. It's not something I enjoy.
Oh no, because have you noticed I got some new glasses?
Oh yeah, look at those
new frames. These are my computer glasses. They're kind of my intermediate distance. They're really comfortable, and they're perfect for the computer. But because I wear glasses to see up close, middle distance, and far away, I am horrible at self-application. I am constantly just jabbing myself in the eye with a brush if I'm trying to do anything close to the eye, or I just have to go on faith that what I'm painting actually does look good because it's just soft focus on everything.
Yeah. So maybe you can do some impressionist applications. We're not worried about the details. We're a deep background. We're going to just do that and then just turn, because you'll have the camera so you can turn it slightly blurry, like they would do on Odo, on Star Trek. It's just like, oh, hang on.
I have a good face for background.
I have a good face for radio, but not now because we're recording it. That's cool. So this week I've been making a piece. I've got to run some pieces, but I've done some another piece for a movie, which I'll get done easily by the end of the week. But as we close to Christmas, it's like, But what's been nice is I've been doing like that compression mold thing again. So you have like the silicone insert and then the jacket. And when I went to get some more, do you need to get that?
Nope.
Cool.
Spam.
I went to get some more freeform air because I had run out. And when I was there, they gave me a little tub of the freeform air fast to try. And I was like, I remember you saying to me, oh, this stuff's good, but it still takes 24 hours to cure. Anyway, I mixed up a little bit and tried it just to see. And
the working time is really fast.
The working time is fast and it gets really hot. I mean, maybe the other one does too, but you don't notice because you don't stick around for the 12 hours to find out. But this got hot and I thought it might bake my piece or melt the plastiline, but it didn't because that was encased in clay underneath. And it worked fine. And after a couple of hours, it had set. Now, I didn't demold it until the next day, but I can confirm it had cooled down and was rock hard 4 or 5 hours later. So I don't think it needs a full 24 hours. Maybe it would slightly warp perhaps, but I think they're just covering their backs. But it does definitely seem to set quicker. So that's good.
What I usually do with the standard freeform air is I'll put it under a heat lamp after I've got it all on there, and that'll kick it fast. Just like heat will cure other stuff, heat will accelerate the epoxy as well.
Excellent. Yeah. I would imagine that would work well. And like you say, because you do need heat, and you notice a significant slowing down of cure time if it's cold. If your workshop is cold, and that's one of the reasons why, I like to do that. I mean, again, if it's a fumey thing like that, I'll do it and then get out. So the temperature is still warm in here, but I'm not in here to enjoy the fumes. So, but I
was this the same mold that you did the test with Michael Davies watermelon?
No, that was a different thing. That was when I was digging around looking for my epoxies, I found the bottle of watermelon. I was like, oh, I should do a little test with this and try it. So I stippled some watermelon into an existing urethane mold, which I've ran. And that was a mold from The Crown. It was going to be for Helena Bonham Carter's neck, which we didn't use in the end. We did a test with it and it didn't work out. So I still got the mold. And so I've run lots of silicon pieces out of it very successfully, and it still works fine. Actually, it's epoxy. I beg your pardon. It's an epoxy mold.
Was the watermelon old? Have you had that for a while?
I have had it for a while, but it still worked. But it completely didn't set where it was in contact with it, and I hadn't done it before, and I didn't know if that's normal.
That's interesting.
If watermelon,
it shouldn't have been. It should. Yeah, no. It should have worked, because I think that's one of the reasons he made it for bald caps and for doing encapsulated pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice stuff. I mean, what I would recommend is like for doing burns and things,
is you can actually foam it.
Is that right?
You can actually foam it.
I mean, I wondered if is it. I'll ask the question: is it latex? Because it smells a little bit like it, but it's not.
No, because you can dissolve it with alcohol.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, it completely inhibited the Plat Gel 25. It set in the cup. It was just when it was in contact with the watermelon, it didn't set. So I'll try another test of something else. But yeah, I was annoyed about it because I was like, shit, this is something I should use, and I really wanted to try it, but it might. When you asked me if I had it for a while, have you noticed that it does inhibit after a time? Does it go through some kind of chemical change?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, did you shake it up really good?
Yeah, but what could be in it that would cause inhibition?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because whatever it is shouldn't be there. It's like...
Michael, if you're listening, please let us know, because I like watermelon too.
Well, I tell you what,
good stuff.
I want to try, because the reason I tried it is because like looking at things for colleges, particularly I've been dealing with a couple of colleges which they're doing big projects, and a lot of the stuff they can't do in the workshops because the workshops are in lockdown, or they've got limited access, or they've got to finish their projects at home, or they're doing a majority of their build at home. So I'm looking at processes like plaster, like Jesmonite or acrylic, Forton, whatever, just stuff that doesn't fume, that isn't stinky. And it occurred to me that the watermelon would be really good for that if that worked, because no fumes, which is brilliant. It takes longer to dry because it's water-based, there's no solvents, but that's the trade-off for having something that's not lethal. So that's nice.
I think you can also use it as a sealer.
Yes, I can imagine you would. I bet you it makes really good skins for making burns. You could like stipple the skin separately, let it dry like I would with cat plastic, and then peel it off. The one thing I really did like about it was the fact that it was really stretchy and soft. It didn't have that kind of hard crinkliness that you get with conventional cat plastic. I'm guessing you can use it directly on the skin too. So you could stipple it on.
I would imagine.
I don't think it's fuming. I'll have to read the instruction. I'm just wondering if it's something you could use to help blend edges as well.
Well, you would have to be able to, because I know one of the things that Michael touts it as is that you don't need to use adhesive when you're if you foam the watermelon and make foam appliances with it. You don't need adhesive to glue it on. You can just use alcohol as your adhesive to soften the back and just jam it on the skin.
Interesting.
Good to go.
Yeah, it's not something I have much experience with, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people do, and it feels like there should be more attention on it, because if it works as a cat plastic and it's not toxic and it's no fumey business, then it feels like it should have a much bigger share of everyone's attention than
I think Michael, I got to tell you, Michael Davies products and watermelon is just one of many things that Michael Davies
his sweat stuff
makes.
Sweat to stop stuff is fucking amazing.
The sweat stop is fantastic. Folks, check out michaeldavies.com.
I'll put the links to it in the show notes. But yeah,
he makes some terrific stuff.
But the inhibition stuff, that was the thing for me. I was like, see, I can't think of a makeup that I've seen that's used it.
I know of Michael. I first learned of his stuff because of his foam gelatin.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, that's not something many people have used, I guess, because
gelatin, if you're doing a fairly thick piece, and you want to always try to make your pieces as thin as they can be and still do the job. But gelatin has some weight to it, like silicone. Solid gelatin can get a little heavy. Yeah. But if you foam it, literally foam it like foam latex, it's amazing.
Do you whip it up in a mixer, or is it chemically?
No, it's a chemical reaction that is, non-toxic, and your own body heat will, as the gelatin warms up because of your own body heat, it gets more flexible than when it's cold. And the foaming gelatin is just really cool.
Yeah, the foaming thing is important because obviously the foam then stops it from being a solid mass, because then you can compress individual cells during the movement, and the whole thing kind of keeps its shape. That's what's so lovely about foam, isn't it?
It actually it kind of displaces the same way silicone does when you move it. Whereas foam latex kind of collapses on itself. It doesn't roll the way silicone will.
Yes.
The gelatin will react pretty much the same way silicone does.
That's cool. And you get a degree of opacity through the foaming, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of people got really excited about. This is the interesting thing. I think silicone's been used long enough now that when people stick on a foam piece, there's good things about it that they want to point out and enjoy, which they wouldn't have done in the first couple of years of silicone, because everyone was so excited with silicone that all the good points of silicone were beating the crap out of foam, and anything that foam had to offer that was good was kind of ignored for the longest time. And now people sticking on foam going, oh wow, this is really good. The sweat passes through the foam. It's really light. It stays on really well. It's very easy to fix and repair. All those little things start being important again after everyone was saying, yeah, but it's not translucent. It's like, yeah, but a good paint job, it doesn't necessarily need to be translucent, so
exactly.
It's horses for courses. There isn't one material for everything. It's whatever works. and you should know all of them so you can make that decision. But yeah,
So now do some research and explore Michael Davies' products.
yeah, I think I'll have to. Well, I'll have to get in touch with him. I mean, I'm keen to do more experimenting. This past few weeks have been quite quiet, which is why I've been doing some videos. And I've got to upload that shit. I haven't done that yet. We've done a few videos the last couple of weeks because we've enjoying our cameras and getting used to the camera rig.
Well, our New Year's resolution has to be that we're going to do a lot more video. We need to work on our online curriculum that we've been talking about for ages.
Yes, and actually get around to
it. We actually have to get around to it because, it seems to be online learning has really come into its own because of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be good. And we got those cameras this year, which are working out really well.
So it just makes sense that we, as teachers, need to do more teaching.
Yes, there's that. But also the other thing I'm quite keen on is things like I was saying with this cat plastic. I didn't video it, but I was thinking it'll be quite nice to video some experiments and trying things out. So we document stuff that I don't know the outcome. I'm not showing you something that I know is going to work. I'm showing you me going, that didn't work. I wonder why. Do you know what I mean? So you get to see, just like most people are when they're doing stuff by themselves and things go wrong. If the only videos you ever see are people flawlessly executing things they've done a million times, you go away thinking, I'm such a turd because I can't do it. It's like, no, I want you kind of see me struggle with it and go, that didn't work. And then everyone's screaming at the screen going, you fucking idiot. Why did you do that? And then I'm like, well, I'm finding this stuff out too. So, and then you kind of go, so it's everyone can go through that. It's okay because it's really important to try things and make mistakes and screw things up and get it wrong because that's how you learn.
It's the only way you learn anything.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely.
Rather than just think, it didn't work, therefore I'm awful. It's like, no, a failure is an event, not a person. That's the expression. So you don't have to wear that hat.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. So that's cool. Anyway, waffle. I suggest we listen to part 2 of Dom, Hailstone, and we'll be back after that. With regards to, can I just poke a little bit about how ideas come to you? When you have an idea, I mean, for me, for example, they start as feelings, and then I try and find a way of getting it down. And normally I will do I'll grab my phone and I'll leave a voice note because it's in my head as a complete thought. So I'll say it out loud. And then later on, when I can do something about it, I can be put back in that place in my head because I hear the words again. Because I've had a million things happen, and you forget. Do you feel moved to kind of sketch things down, or are you just very good at recalling stuff, or do you feel like you have to render something, or do you know when a good idea is worth saving, and otherwise you just let them wash away because they don't mean anything?
Yeah, all of that. I'll write stuff down. If it's very important, I always write it down. I always think that the act of writing something down will kind of capture it, and it sort of does. Most of the time. Some ideas I am just like, no, I'll let that go. If it's a good enough idea, it will come back.
Yep.
I use that. There's other ideas I'll have in my head for 10 or 15 years. I'm just waiting for a place to find that. There's other times I'll grab a bit of paper and just start drawing. Like the other day I did that, and I'll probably be doing something with that in the next couple of months, just like a fully formed sort of 3 minutes kind of thing, Other times it's just random, I've got a bank of photographs that I keep, and often I'll go back through those when I'm stuck for an idea, usually a visual idea. You just start flicking through something, and you always gravitate towards the same things. I guess that's your style, isn't it? Whatever you like is your style. So but I tend not to keep it anything organized, if you know what I mean. I won't. It's all very. I mean, anyone who's worked with me knows I'm a messy fucker.
But a lot of people who you're interested, I'm not placing myself in the same way at all. But I'm like that with my sculpting. There are certain things that have to be in order, but there are a certain amount of chaos that I kind of with sculpting. You'll have bits of things everywhere, fragments of things, little bits of life cast or failed molds, but there's a cool texture on it, and I can't, and there isn't a category for these things, so they just end up being in a space, and it is a messy type of mold. So I think that's not entirely a bad thing to think that way, and you'll end up honing something out of it, and you'll have little things finished that are perfectly done, but that can only happen if there's enough chaos from everything else, I think.
Yeah, I always think it's like squeezing a spot, it's like I think often, like, I'll think of something and, like, there are stories that I've got that are just in my head. Often I'll get to a point where I know that the story's complete, and then I can just write the story, and it's the same with a creature design or anything like that. I'll sometimes go over it in my head and look at it from all angles in my head, and then I'll do it. And then other times I'll just start doodling and see, what happens, what happens there, if I just draw a line there and just fuck around, So there's various ways I think to, skin a cat. So it kind of depends of, like, well, where do you start? It's like, that's what the thing is. If someone gives you a script with a good description of a monster in it, you have that's exactly where you start, and I'm like, that's amazing. Just a paragraph of some mood and something is like, that's enough to get any illustrator, started on a design. What isn't so helpful is giving, that illustrator like 3 versions of the monster that some other artist has done, they always think that that's the best thing to do. Here's what the other people have done. But actually that's basically, that's really putting it in a box, and that kind of really confines you. And, if they start asking for more notes, or start putting more notes and stuff on, then that
because it's like spell checking somebody else's story rather than writing your own story, isn't it? It's just not. The actual fun part is the idea generation. That's the good bit,
Well, it's fun. Yeah. It's funny you should say that. I used to say to people, it's like, you're telling me my poem doesn't rhyme before I finished it.
Yeah.
You're like, I haven't finished it. And they're already just going like, well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, and you're like, all right, okay, it's up to you. It's kind of like, I do want to kind of hang a sign on it, going like, look, the more you talk to me, the worse you'll like it. And it's not like a threat. It's just what I know to experience will happen.
And it's also how it pans out as well, because it's like, I mean, I've done this where I've like worked on stuff and I've read the script. I'm like, that just sounds like bollocks. I don't see how that would work. Or you just start judging the movie for it. And then you see the finished thing and it works. I mean, I bet if you read the script of like, I'm trying to think of like Inglourious Bastards, like that scene at the beginning, where Christopher Waltz is just, hamming it up. I fucking love that scene. But if you just look at the dry words and you picture, I don't know, Matthew Broderick sort of strutting around saying that, it just wouldn't work. But it needs to be him saying those words in that way, and then switching it from, being joyous and like ogling this bloke's daughter and drinking a glass of milk and always need a bit of a one, to suddenly going, whereabouts are they exactly, because I want to fucking shoot them now. Do you know what I mean? And it's really, it happens in that because of who he is, and he makes it come to life. And it is that danger of somebody like you say, just not really getting it in its raw form, and then making a judgment because of their crap imagination, their imagination of what somebody's performance might be.
Mate, you should try writing. I've written a couple of black comedies, and you try and get those past producers, and it's just like, all someone has to say is like, well, this isn't funny, and you go, well, it is funny, and they're like, I don't think it's funny, and you're like, well, you don't have a sense of humor. It's like I'm not. It's like, yes, I do. You don't know what I find funny.
Laughing at an Adam Sandler movie is not the same as
It's not even not laughing at Adam Sandler. It's like, look, if you can't tell that that's a joke, then you don't have a sense of humor. It's not about whether you find that joke funny.
No, it's do like, you have a sense.
If you're writing a comedy, there will be like 5 jokes per page, and like you're lucky to find one of them funny. And that's the hit rate that you would want. It's kind of like, well, I don't find it scary. It's like, well, have you lit it? You know, have you put the right lens on it? You know, have you done this? You know what I mean? It's just, it's so easy to tear things down. It really is. And, you know, and it is what people mean by staying positive, but like, that's ultimately worse as well. You know, that, you know, like, being positive about something isn't always the answer either, you know? So I don't know.
True,
I don't know.
Having said that, I do like, I still think Happy Gilmore was a good movie. I was just plucking it out of thin air as an example. You're right. I mean, it needs to be a completed thing, which is why I'm excited about like when you make your own little shorts, or you've made like music video like The Eel or something, where it's like it can be your thing, so you get to do it right the way that you see it. And if it's, you know what I mean, I think maybe it's important for people to do more than just makeup. They actually need to maybe do something where they put a makeup in a context and I don't know. It sounds wanky. So I remember at college being told about this. I just wanted to do makeups, but the teacher was like, no, you need to do a thing with it. You need to make it into a little story. And I couldn't understand it. And I get that now. I think it's a case of like doing more with it rather than just being a pair of hands for somebody else. You know, maybe there's more you can do. And so we should, because we have that at our disposal. I don't know, maybe not everybody, but...
Well, yeah, you do that. I mean, it's interesting because, like, back when I started, you know, it was like there was no work. So they did come to you and go, well, what do you do? You know, and then you show them, and then there was more input, you know, and now there's kind of less input, but I still see them asking for input. You was working on a film the other year where it was sort of very much like, well, what do you do? You know, and, you know, you just have to come up with something to fit the hole in the script, you know, and if you see those opportunities on films, I think you should run with them always. But it's often, you don't know those opportunities are there, you know, like, because that's the thing is some producers and directors, they hate you if you come up with any ideas, and some of them, they love you, but you don't know which ones they are until usually after the fact. You know? Do you know what I mean? So potentially you could be coming up with the next thing, you know, because that's how the Thing happened, wasn't it? You know, it was like Rob Bottin going, this doesn't really work for me. I don't really want to do just another bug movie. I want to do something that's crazier, you know. But like, how many effects people actually say that to the director?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They don't want to be. You don't want the spotlight. Yeah, so it's...
you don't want the spotlight, but it's actually you do. You know, like you know, if you're Rob Bottin, you know, you need that spotlight. Otherwise, you know, well, he didn't get it and he went away.
Yeah,
you know, so you know, a lot of the bigger films, you know, they have script holes. Massive script holes in them, so they really do want you to kind of come along and fill it, like almost like an actor would. I think, but then you've got to play politics, which is just horrible, and you know, that's worse, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah. It's be like a royal court with all its, you know, its defined roles.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be the fool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, learning how to nod. Yeah, but yeah, how do you find it?
I'm so couched in the whole just making side of things. See, this is my burden: is that I've got such a relationship with the making process. Do you know what I mean? I'm so embedded with process and how stuff is done. Yeah. That's been my thing for so long that I haven't really got the energy to try and advance a creative output. But what I'm seeing is the ability for one person can put out now is so extensive that, I mean, like, one of the things I've really enjoyed is like doing this podcast of mine for a few years now, and I find it really suits the way I think, and I can do like nice cross-section drawings with it. So I get a great deal of joy out of explaining processes and sort of working with those. But at the same time, that comes at the cost of being like a kind of a creative person in terms of ideas. I realized I'm not a very good conceptual person at all. If I needed creature designers, I just pay someone to do it, because there's no way I could have ideas in my head and then get them out on paper. I could render somebody else's ideas and I'd make a good mold, and I could, do you know what I mean? I could do all the functional side of things, but that seems to matter less and less from an ideas point of view, just in the same way that being a really good typist doesn't necessarily mean you're going to write a better script, because ultimately that's not the nice font and the spacing isn't what makes a script a good script, or it's not the hard part of it. And so I'm feeling the call for weird existential angsty feeling of like, God, I should do something a bit more creative somehow. And I don't know quite what that is, because I'm not going to make a film, I don't think, but I could make a short, or I could grab some music I like and do a video version of that, because I get that kind of vibe. But
yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, you're right. I think you've got to look at what is it that floats your boat. What does it feel like it's not work when you're doing it, and you get into the flow of doing things, and just listen to that. And it's just, I think the danger is that you end up following something that you think you should do because that's all you know, and all the time without realizing you're doing something to a very high level that you thoroughly enjoy, but you haven't thought of that as the thing. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, I had something recently where I was doing stuff with fractals, you know, and I had to, you know, learn how to use this fractal program and generate these fractals really, really quickly, you know, which is something occasionally, you know, you get to do. You know, someone goes like, look, use this new thing, and you've only got like 2 weeks to do it. So you're like, if I fail, then it's going to be nothing. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just going to fall on your ass. And like, so it's a sink or swim. And that I love. I love like learning something new and then putting it to practical use, like really, really quickly. And I'm happy to say on this occasion I swam, you know, and the feeling is great. You're like, oh my God, I've got this new set of tools. But then afterwards, I'm like, actually, I don't really like doing it. You know, like you're like, oh yeah, that's the problem with new CG stuff, is that often the stuff looks really, really good, but all you're doing is just moving the levers. You know, it's like someone asks you to play with an app for like 2 days, you know, and by the end of playing with that app, you're like, oh, it's really boring. I've learned this app now, you know. And the stuff that you're outputting is still amazing, but like you're actually, because the effort put into that isn't much. It doesn't feel
and over time it will wear down,
so,
because it's like anything. It's like Instagram filters and stuff. Like anyone can throw a bunch of filters and stuff and make a dull, you know, take a photo of your feet or a cup of tea or something and make it look kind of interesting. But because you see that so much, that's now not what is a good piece of work. You know, it's still the composition or something that the weird. The hard stuff, whatever it is that's hard to do, is the thing that you know is hard to do. That's what has the value, and it's hard to kind of avoid. You have to put effort and work into anything, I think, because the absence of it, like if you think it looks polished because, like you say, if you picked up an app and you think no one's seen it, so therefore in a couple of years it won't be, you know. Just like when you look at, like, I don't know, you look at Boss Nass and that style, which the first one of the new the original trilogy, episode 1. I can't even think what it's called. The one with the pod races, all that. You know what I mean? There's so much terrible CG in that. It's almost like everyone was like, I'm sure it wasn't like that, but it feels like, you know, the stuff from episode 4 20 years before holds up more than do you know what I mean? Like when Boss Nass wobbles his neck, I remember thinking it's Brian Blessed's voice, and he's going, and you know, and I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, they just put that characteristic in as an affectation to show that they can make stuff look like gelatinous wobbly gook, and it's like it doesn't, but and it just looks horrible now, and it's like it's sort of okay. It's taken quite a few years to come around, but it is that thing of like, but you look at something like, I don't know, a good fucking etching that's 500 years old, but it's awesome still, you know, because it is unique craftsmanship. It's still good work, and it's just finding a way to manifest good work. I think ultimately that's what we need, more good work.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and you know, as you said, just not. It's that thing of using. Well, it's like using a saw or something, isn't it? It's like you can't, you're using a handsaw, you know, you can cut down the tree and it's a lot of effort, but like you don't care, you know. You ultimately don't care who sawed that down. you know, even though they've felled a tree and, you know, whatever, because they use the saw and, you know. But I wonder if there's some sort of way. I mean, I definitely have heard younger people talk about how it's amazing that you can sculpt in clay and things like that, you know. I've heard that from digital people and I'm like, you joking? I'm like, it happened twice. And I was like, I thought it was a wind up both times. And I was like, yeah, but you must be able to sculpt. They were really brilliant ZBrush sculptors. And one of them was like, I was like, you must be able to sculpt a little bit in clay. And they were like, no, they couldn't do it. They'd never, from the age of like 12 or whatever, they'd always used a computer. You know, so they've always had a different way of, but they can do stuff so much quicker than I can, you know, on ZBrush. But they can't, they don't have what they would perceive as bravery to do it in clay.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's probably more a reluctance to sort of to deal with the physical, but that feels like a hump they could probably get past if made to, you know, and then maybe the other side of that would actually enjoy it, and then they'd meet up with their sculptural selves. You know, now we're past the clay under my fingernails bit, and they realize they can sculpt. Because that's something I've noticed with ZBrush is it reveals to me what I don't know much quicker. I can bang out a face in 10 minutes, and then I get to the draw, and I'm like, oh shit, what happens around there? And I'll need reference pictures. And it's like it doesn't sculpt for you. It does definitely accelerate the process, but it doesn't take away. It doesn't replace knowing how to sculpt. Which I think it maybe
the jaw is of course difficult
just where you don't really look at, you know.
No, it is for me.
And then when you look at a real person,
there
isn't a lot of evidence there, you know, especially if they're not like emaciated. There's not much to see really, you know, or it's deformed by you know, muscles over the top or a jowl or something, and it's like I don't know. It's a weird. They're interesting problems to wrestle with.
Well, no, totally. Yeah, no, jaws have always been difficult for me as well. Like the way the jaw meets the neck, it's always like, it's such
really
a pain
weird.
in the
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, but it's like, what? No, I've known a couple of people. Trust me, it's always just like, wow, bollocks! I didn't pay attention there. But there's a couple of angles that, like, if you don't get them right, it's just off. You know, like yeah, it is. Yeah, it's as you said, it accelerates it, but then you hit those snags, you know, and like, I can't be bothered, you know. Like, I find I was going to say with ZBrush, I find it's really helped accelerate both my drawing and my sculpting in both directions, you know, because ZBrush is very much like drawing, you know, in 3 dimensions, and then to take that back into clay sculpting was, I can imagine it would be
actually, because like you say, you really get to find out what it's kind of like. It's the work of finding a route to somewhere. Like I've been walking a lot recently because it's, you know, we're on lockdown. I go on about 3-4 hour walks, and so I've been learning about my area, and I've been, you know, going far and wide. And then I want to take, you know, the family there, and we'll go for a walk, or I find a nice spot, and I'm like going to go somewhere, and I drive there really efficiently because I've walked the road, so I've known it from the ground up. Do you know what I mean? And every once in a while, I'll come across a new area. I'm like, holy shit, look at the view here. This is lovely. I wouldn't have known about this if I hadn't have walked here on foot. And then I'll find somewhere we can park nearby, and then I'll bring everyone. And it's like, so it's kind of a bit like that. I think you get to do lots of things digitally, and you sort of push things far, and then you see where things are without, you know, making a lot of mess or needing an armature and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of, you burn through a load of iterations of your own crap, I think. And then you can find the gold in it. Not quicker, but you can do more, and then you can be very efficient with clay because of it. It's almost like playing a simulation, you know, to learn, you know, how not to crash a car. So you crash a car or land a digital plane and crash it hundreds of times to make your mistakes, and then you become a better pilot for real because you're just, you know what I mean? You get to find out what like shutting one eye is like and go, oh God, I can't judge distances. Or do you know what I mean? So you really put those fires out in your head that you wouldn't dream of doing in reality necessarily. In order to sort of, do you know what I mean, get those purged out your soul, and then you can think more clearly because in a weird kind of way. Anyway.
No, absolutely. And also just clay, hands-on clay sculpting is, you can't beat that really. You know, it's like, well, especially you come back from doing doing it digitally. It's just, it's so satisfying. You know, there is a weird, like, and I don't think this, as I said, I've always grown up with computers. I don't think this is the case, but when you complete something digitally, it never feels complete.
Yeah.
You know, like completing a clay sculpture is there have definitely been points where I'm like, okay, that's done. I'm not going to go any more on that, you know, but digitally there's always something to do, you know, and, so yeah, it never feels complete, and it always feels a bit depressing. I always think it's like you're just sort of moving it far away.
There's so much you can do. I remember seeing, Chris Costa's stuff, and I messaged him about this because it's the first time I've seen one of his sculpts where, obviously, like he does, he takes it to the end where it's completely perfect and painted and haired and lovely. Ridiculous levels of talent.
Yeah.
But he'll show you the block out, and then he went to the trouble of sticking it on, a sculpting stand and making it look like it was a lump of clay with all the tool marks. And it was really odd because it kind of, it's digital, but at the same time putting it on a stand and making it look like, it had the tool marks in it like you would when you're, you've got your rake tool up and you're working it like you would normal clay. And to all intents and purposes, it is clay. But it was just kind of fun to see it, made to look like a clay sculpt by going to the trouble of putting it on, an actual sculpting stand. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
kind of subverts it for one of that's such a wanky thing. So.
Yeah, his stuff is incredible.
And he really gets it.
It's like, his stuff's incredible. I mean, I don't have that level of discipline. I have to say that's the sort of thing I'm just like, he's got such a process, he's worked on those things so long and so hard that he knows exactly the A to B. Whenever I'm sculpting and that, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm just
you don't have that kind of same. Yeah, he's broken it down to such a point where he can codify it almost as a perhaps not an easy process, but still a process that's repeatable, which is crucial if you want to expand and teach other people, which he's doing, and he's doing it right as well. He's not charging peanuts for it because he puts a lot of heart and soul into it, and you see the students' work. It's like, fuck, this really works as a process, Oh yeah, it really does. It's amazing. I mean, I'm like, when he starts talking about primary forms, I'm like, primary what? Like tertiary.
What? I mean, I do know exactly what he's
I don't
talking
think
about,
like
but
that.
I don't. Yeah, I'm like, I just don't need to think like that. Like like I've experimented with that. I've done loads of sculpts like that where you're doing it by the textbook. You're like, okay, this goes here and that goes here and that goes here. But I wouldn't do it like that for fun nowadays. You want to kind of do all the stuff for fun that is you learn whilst you're learning, you learn how to do the hard work, and then when you're actually doing the work, I think it's much better.
I think so. I mean, this is what I found with ZBrush. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm just doing like half-hour long sculpts or an hour-long sculpt, and then I'm calling that done, and then moving on to the next one rather than polishing it. I don't want to polish. I just want to just get used to the act of sculpting, and once I've kind of blocked it out and I've got the sort of character there, for me that's enough. And I couldn't work that quickly in clay, so I'm enjoying that as a real thing. Could we talk a little bit about your artwork? Something you posted on Instagram. The thing I absolutely loved was the cover art for Necro Deathmore album. It looked kind of like like a kind of a wood print, kind of woodblock print sort of style. Fucking love it. How do you do that? Do you do that with pen or you digital, or do you actually carve it, or how do you? It's fucking glorious.
No, that's all a bit. It's not. It was laborious, but it's like a lot of it's a cheat. There's and
do you mind talking about how it was done? Sorry, before I mean,
no.
I don't know if you're protective of the process or whether you just.
No, it's not protected. I bought some like woodcut. They're like stock footage things. Like they're stock. So I bought like about 3 or 4 figures, and then I would redo those figures, if you know what I mean. And so I would copy those woodcut figures. And so some of those are the original figures.
But there's a lot going on. I mean, it's like a Where's Wally for fucking...
Oh, yeah, there's shitloads. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's shitloads, yeah. I mean, they're all like... So you take one and you go, okay, I'll draw that head again, and I'll draw a different head, and you take that and then draw it again and again and again. And there's hundreds of figures in there. So by the end, you're not drawing the same thing again or even tweaking it. And then some you are. So you're like, oh, I'll have the leg from this and I'll move that leg around here. And, and then I can't remember. That took about 3 weeks.
I mean, it looks like a lot of work. It's such an involved image.
Yeah,
and do you do that digitally? Did you draw that on a computer, or did you do that by pen?
No, some of that was digital, and I'm pretty sure then it was then printed out and then reworked over. Most of it was definitely digital to begin with, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't on like an iPad. I think it was pre-iPad, so it would have been on a Wacom tablet. And then it was like, I mean, usually like I have to say I do tend to draw everything by hand. And not to sound like a cheat, but if you've seen the album artwork, that thing, you'll understand why I was cheating there. Because it's just a nightmare. I do remember the process of going like, oh, I'm going to draw it all by hand. And they're going like, oh no, this is a real style. Like, if you look at woodcuts, like they're not just made up. There's actual rules to the woodcut and how long people's sleeves should be and what their shoes should look like, and all of this sort of thing. And if you compare woodcuts, they don't, they do compare. There's a definite style that woodcuts are in, and so if you start deviating from that style, it suddenly starts to not look.
And did you know this stuff before, or was that just you researching and studying it all?
No. No, I didn't know any of this. I thought I just went in going like, I'll be able to draw like that. That's easy. Just the sort of arrogant twit, just being like, oh yeah, I can draw that. That's the easy cartoon. That's just a line and that's a line, and it's really easy. Whereas actually to get that stuff right is incredibly difficult. It's not. You'd really need to come up with some sort of generator, some woodcut generator. Someone will do that.
But that's
somewhere,
the hard work, isn't it, that you put into it to make it right? Yeah, that's awesome. I guess
I always still feel guilty of copying some of that, because there's definite figures in there that are just copied and trees.
Well, if you're happy for me to post it, I'll put links to it and put some pictures out so everyone can see what I'm talking about. Because it is like a Where's Wally of I don't know, medieval wood carvers. Like, Jesus Christ,
just
and cranes being dropped. And it looks awesome. It's very, very cool. And your paintings as well. There's like the Nosferatu, and there's some really cool drawings. Again, do you do all that?
Oh yeah,
like just acrylic on canvas, or do you do stuff digitally? You paint it all digitally, or you bit of both, or?
It's a bit of both. Like the Nosferatu I think there's an original one, which was I think one of the first things I ever did in Painter on the PC. So, is it called not Substance Painter? I can't remember what it's called. By Carell, I think. And there's an original of that doesn't look much like the main painting. That main painting is quite big. It's mainly acrylic and sort of ink. There's a bit of oil on there as well. Then the other ones, what I tend to do now is I'll work something out digitally, and then if I'm going to do a painting of it, then I'll print that out and then paint on top of it.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, that has its own problems. So you have to print out if you print stuff out on like a painting or whatever, it comes out really dark usually. So you have to work with that, or just print out a vague outline or whatever. Like there's a Charles Bukowski there that was done like that, which was done with printing out onto a canvas in dark and then painting acrylics on top of that, and then that was
nice. That Bukowski picture was lovely. I remember that. And
yeah,
and the Vincent Price one as well. I really like that. That was more of an ink, or it looked like pen and ink.
Yeah, that's pen and ink. Yeah, that's much more traditional. Yeah, I like doing stuff like that. Stuff where it's just where you can't go wrong. Where that's really fun. Yeah, where you just get a pen and a bit of paper. Yeah, those are fun.
I got and one last thing I want to ask you, which is it probably might sound really crass. You can tell me to piss off if you don't even want to answer this question. Is this fucking what is it, like a weird puppy thing on Instagram that's kind of breathing and moving? Now this is what I like about about your stuff. Sometimes I don't know what I'm looking at, and I really like that, and I can't figure out what's going on, and that's what I really like the fact that you do stuff like that, and I want to just touch on that because I think it's kind of like when I see people trying to do stuff, I get the impression that I can almost see the mechanism of how they're doing things, and with your stuff, and you probably not best to either agree or disagree with this, but it just looks like I have a hard time trying to know exactly what's real, what's digital, what's practical, and all that, which I guess is the whole point. And
that's good.
But also I don't feel that it doesn't feel like there's no, it's almost like you had a real thing you were trying to say first, and that's been preserved throughout the whole process. You didn't get derailed by the act of making it. And how the fuck did you do that? That's fucked up. Are you just going to say that's a real weird?
Well, I can't.
Thing?
I found it. Yeah, it's just one of those things that you find in the reservoir. No, it's something I made, but like I'm going to be doing some more of that stuff, so I should probably just shut up about that. But usually that's like, I mean, there's a bunch of things like that. It's more like something like that. It's just something I'm like, oh, how about if I do this? It's probably why it feels kind of pure.
There's nothing demonstrative about it. Do you know? It doesn't feel like it feels like real footage of something happening, and that feels to me like if somebody was going to spend a lot of energy and a lot of time doing something very clever, they would really make sure you got a clear shot at seeing this thing, and that's why a lot of those things don't feel genuine. But that's what I like to see. So there's something about how you do stuff. It's a theme I see it on a regular basis where it's sort of horrible body stuff, but it's done in a way that it doesn't feel like it's glorifying, like you could imagine how much more extreme something could be, but you haven't gone there because it doesn't need to be. Do you know what I mean? And you got a good sense of that.
I mean that is thank you. That is a deliberate process. That is deliberate part of the process, which is just to, if you look, and it's something that I learned doing CG, is that if you're working with CG, right, there will be a producer that will come along and just go like, "Oh, that's wrong," and you're like, "What?" And you don't actually know what they mean, and they'll go like, "No, I don't like that," and then you're like, "What?" And they'll be like, "The way the eye's moving, there's something wrong with the CG, whatever." And you're like, "Okay, I'll change it." And I've had that like numerous times. Like someone has come along and go like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "That's the reflection off the microphone hitting them." And they're like, "No, I don't like that. Take that out." And you're like, "But why?" And they're like, "Well, I just don't like it." And you're like, "Oh, right, okay, I'll take that thing out." And what you realize is that when you're working on actual footage with no CG on, producers will come along and ask you to take the bits they don't like out. Okay, so, and what that does is it makes images start looking artificial. They're just sort of cleaning up the image, and it doesn't actually need to have any CG on it at all. So when you're working with CG, what you do is you leave all those bits in, and all those bits would definitely be bits that are like, you're just going to look like, hang on, is that me making a mistake, or is that just just real, and as long as you leave those bits in, it's fine. The CG tends to look real, and I'm including bits that of just shitty CG. It's because actually real life. They always say like leave the reality into it, but I would say leave more of that, like way more of that. Because things like computer imagery or things in real life are like weird things happen to them, you know, like just bits fall off them and like hair just gets stuck in weird positions. And, you know, so as part of my working process, going back to right at the beginning of this conversation, when someone goes like, oh, don't bother with that on set, you know, we'll fix it in post. That is the correct response, because you actually want as much shit in your shot as possible. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you want those challenges. You want to be able to go, you know, I instead of going like, oh, I'm going to make something for this, I'm just going to go like, what's the first thing on my shelf that I can grab that looks vaguely similar to this?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And then just mash it in there and go like, well, okay, I'll put a turnip in here and see if that works for a head, you know. And then sometimes it does, you know, the turnip works really well, you know, and you're like, oh, fuck. I never would have thought that I could get the turnip.
It's almost like you've got,
you know?
Especially with digital stuff, you've got such levels of fuckery and possible perfection and like ruthless efficiency that can take place.
Yeah.
That's not what real life is. And so you almost have, you have to allow some randomness in to keep it grounded.
Yeah.
And like you say, perhaps more than most people would think, because they're so used to seeing polished things, and a lot of it, that's actually the undoing, isn't it? It's been polished to such a degree that it ceases to be recognizable as something that's happened. It looks like somebody's done it rather than it's happening, kind of thing.
Well, no, totally. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day because I know someone who uses like tarot cards, you know, and I always used to laugh at that. And now I'm thinking, no, tarot cards are an excellent idea. You know, if you work on it in a very rigid way, in a very, you know, a way where everything is controlled in your life, then having a tarot card, just dealing the cards out and obeying the cards, is just saying, it's kind of just like opening the door.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say? Yeah, exactly. Who's to say that the decisions you're making are the right ones? Do you know what I mean? People leave the house and end up dying because they walk in front of a bus because of a decision that they believe was the right one. And who's to fucking say? So, you know.
Well, no, totally. Just open the door to like, well, whatever,
and learn to cope with it.
You know, especially creatively. And, you know, if you're doing CG, for instance, like you just want the thing, you're like, oh, there's something interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because it's almost,
how do I make
it's almost like the flip side of that is the conceit that the thing that you're allowed to think completely and thoroughly and polish and say, fuck off, I need another 6 weeks to make it just right. The conceit is that you're thinking that your ideas are perfect enough to be released and that they'll be right. As we've seen with the fucking, you know, the Boss Nass stuff in that Star Wars movie, like at some point somebody went home and had a massive wank thinking, oh, I'm fucking amazing. And now you look at it and you go, that looks like a fucking, a Wii game fucking video sequence. It just looks horrible. But at one point someone thought that was amazing. Yeah. So it's like, it is that sort of working with things that are not necessarily entirely your responsibility. You've done 90% of it, but you've allowed 10% of something else in, and you're just going to roll with it rather than ruthlessly.
Yeah, and it's just your job. I mean, one of my favorite stories is that on Alien, you know, Dan O'Bannon was working with H.R. Giger, and one of the producers came in and just said, oh, we'll how about 6 fingers on the Alien, you know? And Dan O'Bannon just raged and was like, oh, fuck's sake, producers don't know anything, you know, Giger, what are you going to do, you know? And, you know, Dan O'Bannon went off on one and Giger just put 6 fingers on it, you know? And at that point, Dan O'Bannon realized, he goes, oh, I realized that at that point I was working with an actual genius. You know, he goes, and a genius's job is just to do exactly what he's told, but to do it in a way that makes it good, and you know, how you didn't think was possible, and it wasn't going to work, you know. And he goes, I realized that I wasn't the genius, you know, like, you know, like, and that's how I feel most of the time. You know, I spend so much of my time just going, oh, for fuck's sake, they don't know anything, you know. And it's like, well, that's not the point. You know, the point is just to do your job and to the best of your ability, and see what happens. You know, because seeing what happens is like, I think as you get older, I'm like, I want to know what happens in my life. You know, I'm like, well, what will happen?
Yeah, because you don't know. This? You think you do, but you don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. No, exactly. You know, and you get given these wonderful opportunities and you totally fuck them up. And then other opportunities where someone, you know, you stumble into and somehow just work, you know. And but you should always try. You should always try and do as many different things as possible, I think. So, but yeah. Anyway,
perfect. That was a good end, I think, to that. That's fucking glorious. Thank you so
brilliant.
much.
Okay.
I really appreciate you
That
giving
was
your
good.
time like this, Dom.
No worries. That was excellent. No, thanks, Stuart. Yeah.
So if we want to direct people towards you, where would you like people to look? I'm guessing your Instagram and your website.
My website and my Instagram, please. Yeah. And if not that, my Facebook page. Yeah.
Okay, doke. So that's DominicHailstone.com is your
Yeah.
website, and on Instagram it's Dominic_Hailstone_, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll put links
Thank
to
you.
these on the notes anyway.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Dom, thank you so much. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
And there you have it.
He was interesting. He's one of those guys that makes things, but also designs things very well. There's so many people I work with that are, you know, hands that make stuff, but the designing aspect of things goes along with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm excited about what ZBrush has to offer for that, because, you know, somebody that designs something, because it feels like it used to be people would design something digitally and then hand a picture of that digital design over to somebody who would then build it in clay. And now you kind of shortening that step, because the person who does the design can now make an asset which could then be used in the film or in the show or in the game. You know, because the thing you're using to
Whether
design,
it's about a digital double.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're probably going to spend a bit more time this year talking about ZBrush, but practically in a way of how it can be used and the way it is being used by people already. Because I'm keenly aware that this podcast is about prosthetics, so I don't want to take away from that. And if we find a real rich seam of information that's growing, we maybe need to look at starting a second podcast because
perhaps
because people are going to come here for the rubber stuff, you know. So
well, I can think of several names right off the top of my head of sculptors who are using ZBrush for practical purposes rather than just digital purposes. There's Rod Maxwell for one, Jamie Salmon, Landon Meyer.
Yep.
Just three right off the top of my head that are doing it. Kazu is doing it. I think Rick Baker has played with the 3D printing for prosthetic pieces as well. So it's, you know,
well, this is interesting.
There's definitely precedent.
There is definitely precedent, and I think as scanning becomes more accessible and feasible, then it's going to fall to people that can use those things together to create real world benefits, because that's the thing. It's about using it in such a way that you're actually accomplishing something that it needs to be done and can't really be done any other way.
Well, this is stuff
like
that
those nosing.
This is stuff that I love being able to talk to Maddie Scott Spencer about.
Yes.
Because she actually started her career as a prosthetic sculptor.
Yes. I see she did some stuff for Gentle Giant as well.
Yeah.
And they did a lot. They had, I don't know if they're still there. They had a location, like a scanning setup based at Pinewood. And that might be interesting to chat to them as well. So we have a few leads on the scanning things as well. So there's a podcast we did ages ago with Scanners and Schoonerides, I think it's called. I have to find out what number it is.
Yeah.
But
we talked a little bit. That was close to the beginning.
Those were early doors. But yeah, it would be good to speak to somebody who's doing it now.
Rod Maxwell
using
is
different
using
stuff.
an Artec scanner, I believe.
I had a look, and he had all these molds that he was going to get rid of. Oh no, they were life casts. I beg your pardon. He had life casts, molds, and he was scanning the molds and then inverting the data to basically create a cast.
Crazy.
It was amazing. It was really neat. So yeah, I think we should have to get Rod Maxwell on that. But I think we need a little coherent plan about how we approach this, because like I say, we're in danger of getting really excited about the digital stuff and leaving behind the people who are here for the rubber stuff. Mm-hmm. Because this is a moving target as this thing changes. And as I start using more digital stuff and using more stuff in my own work, I don't want to get lost in the fact that I still spend a lot of time mixing up rubber and painting rubber and sticking things on skin. And that's where the meat and potatoes of it is.
And that's
because at the end of the
that's
day, I don't want to do
fun
stuff
part.
just. Well, it is because I don't really want to sculpt something and then never have it in my hands. You know what I mean? I like
Yeah.
to actually make stuff and print stuff and have a physical thing.
Well, that's the whole reason I left visual effects animations, because I got tired of not being able to touch the stuff I was making.
Yeah, but there's definitely a middle way, I think, where you can enjoy the benefits of both. And I think this is the magic of ZBrush, is that it doesn't just do one thing, and it's not just for one group of people. You take from it what you need. It's a big sandbox, and some people will never use 95% of it because they just don't need to. But everything they need is in it. Just like a supermarket, you don't have to buy something from every shelf. You just go in there and buy the 10 items you need, but it has to be in a big supermarket for those items to be available, because lots of people need a different 10 items.
Right. Good analogy.
But thank you. I'm sure I used that one before, but anyway.
You're good at analogies.
Nice analogy. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, it's just a way of describing something without, and often it's rude or involves farting or something like that, which is,
speaking of which.
You have a remote-controlled fart machine.
I have a remote-controlled fart machine. I need to put new batteries in it, but it's amazing. No, this is a must-have for so many people I know. You're one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So watch your mailbox.
Okay. Excellent. It would be a good Christmas, and the thing is, the boys would love that too. My kids would probably dig it.
Oh,
very funny.
No doubt. It's teenage boys and fart machines, match made in heaven.
What's to not like? I was thinking, there's one makeup I did for something that I can't talk about yet, but you've seen pictures of it, the vampire thing with the teeth, and I sculpted and printed the teeth and then made a silicone mold so that I could make teeth in a firmer silicone than the rest of the piece, and it worked really well, and that was a nice thing to do. But I would quite like to sculpt some masks with different elements. I might do sort of small portions of faces just to physically reduce the size of the job, where you like sculpt them as different elements, so you could print the gums, you could print the teeth, you could print the skin, and then make them as separate items and put them together. I don't have a printer that can print flexible and sufficiently colored elements that are the right colors, so I'd have to mold them and cast them out in different materials. But the idea of making a set of gums that clips into the back of the face perfectly and the teeth slot in, and they can all be made out of different materials, the right color.
No, it's basically printing your individual subtools.
Yes, basically, and then assembling it to great effect. Rather than paint the teeth a white color with an opaque white paint, let's make them translucent ivory, so they look like real teeth, and then the gums can be the same, and then the skin can be whatever skin the person needs to be.
Well,
and
all you need is a Stratasys 750.
How much would that set me back?
$1.2 million, maybe.
Yeah, it's not been a great year, so I might hold off on that.
But
you have to get a new roof first.
Like 9 different materials simultaneously.
Oh wow, that's amazing. But then you know what the problem with that is?
When it goes wrong,
you'll be hard pressed to find. Yeah, but you won't find many people with story. That's why I got a CR10S, because like there are millions of those, and literally anything that goes wrong with it, someone will have experienced and will have a video of.
Yeah.
So it's the support base, but maybe for that money you get someone turn up at your house,
staff.
In a shiny suit. Yeah. Well, I think if you spend that much money, you'd have a maintenance regime with it. I mean, Christ, my car has a maintenance regime, and that costs nothing like that. That's a 12-year-old Volkswagen Passat, so held together with rust and prayers. So, all right, dude, I guess we should wrap this up.
Fun chat.
It was fun chat. It was good to catch up with you. It's been a while. We have another guest that I recorded today. It's all been down to me not getting my shit together, which is why there's entire weeks between episodes. But
well, I'm not going out of town for Christmas this year, so there's a good chance that we could do the wraps.
Excellent. Well, do get in touch with us. You can always email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com, or leave us a message on our website, which is battleswithbitsofrubber.com.
Or you could even send us an Instagram message on our page, Battles with Bits of Rubber. All right, mate.
Cheers, buddy. It's good to speak to you.
Talk to you soon.
Catch up soon.
Okay.
Cheers, man.
Bye.
You can get in touch through our Facebook page or email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information. If you enjoyed this episode, tell someone else and help us grow by sharing it on social media. Thanks for listening.